Kraven is the most brutal movie in Sony's Spider-Man-less universe, but that's not enough to save the film. Today in Mr. Headcannon, we're gonna explain why, without spoilers. The story's super simple. Kraven is the son of Nikolai Kravenov, a mob boss obsessed with poaching who wanted his family to become the ultimate hunters. But during a hunt for a super strong lion, Kraven was left on the brink of death. He survived thanks to a magical potion that gave him animal-based superpowers, and his mindset changed entirely. He decided to leave his dad and become a different kind of hunter, a hunter of people. From that moment on, Kraven used his powers and his connection to animals to take down poachers, becoming an unstoppable, brutal, and ruthless hunter. But the real story kicks off when a group of mobsters kidnaps his brother Dimitri to blackmail his dad, and Kraven has to rescue him before it's too late. I won't say more, otherwise it'd be spoilers. One of the highlights of the movie is how Kraven's character is built. It's completely different from the comics, because the Kraven we know and love wants to be the world's greatest hunter, not protect animals. But I gotta admit, this version of Kraven is the best written character in Sony's entire universe.
Prove it.
They take the time to show his childhood. We see how much pressure his dad put on him and how his mom's death affected him. Kraven was supposed to inherit his dad's criminal empire, but afraid of becoming a horrible person as Nikolai, he chose to forge his own path. We understand why he hates poachers so much, and his connection to nature is well explored. But we also see he's just as violent as his dad. He just thinks his actions are justified, because he only kills people he believes deserve it. And yeah, I know how all of this sounds. This version of Kraven feels a lot like the Punisher, and honestly, they might spend a bit too much time on his origin story, but we'll get to that. Surprisingly, the movie has more good stuff, like Kraven's relationship with his brother. When they were kids, Nikolai thought Kraven was the stronger of the two because he was older and braver. Dimitri was always weak and a coward, so Kraven had to help him constantly, until he abandoned him with their dad after becoming a hunter of men.
You abandoned me!
This deeply affected Dimitri, who did everything to win Nikolai's approval, but failed. It's not the most original story ever. We've seen similar dynamics a million times in live action, but I appreciate that Kraven's relationship with his brother is well developed. Dimitri is the only weakness of an otherwise invincible protagonist. Plus, if we didn't care about Dimitri, we wouldn't be invested in watching Kraven travel halfway across the world to save him. Believe it or not, he ends up being the best adapted character in the whole movie. In the comics, Dimitri becomes the Chameleon, a Spider-Man villain who hasn't yet faced the web crawler in live action. The actor does a good job, and his character development surprised me. It works perfectly. I even kind of want to see a Chameleon spin-off, which I never thought I'd say out loud. My only complaint is that they cast an actor who's way too short to play Chameleon. Fred Hechinger is 5'7", and there's a scene where it's painfully obvious he's shorter than Aaron Taylor Johnson. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But don't let the marketing fool you. This isn't an action-adventure movie. It's a mob story.
I don't get it.
This caught me off guard because, based on the trailers, I thought it'd be like John Wick with superpowers. But nope, it's a mob story that just so happens to include Kraven. Turns out, Kraven's dad is a super influential mobster, and most of Kraven's victims are other mobsters trying to blackmail Nikolai. The whole plot revolves around mobsters scheming against each other. That's where Rhino comes in, as the main villain of the movie. Sony turned Alexei Sitsevich into a wannabe mafia boss who got his powers through an experiment. His origin story has a few cool nods to the comics, but Alexei is a weird character. They try to sell him as a manipulative mastermind who could take over Nikolai's criminal empire, but he's also overly emotional and tries to be funny. He's like a cheap Netflix kingpin without Vincent D'Onofrio's charisma or depth. There's one scene where he randomly starts yelling like an animal, and I couldn't tell if I was supposed to laugh or feel tense. But at least his design's okay, right? Well, I wouldn't say that. This time we don't get the mechanical Rhino from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was inspired by the Ultimate Universe. Sony went for a more classic look, which suits him better, because he actually looks like a Rhino instead of a Transformer. But you can tell the budget wasn't enough to show Rhino fully transformed on screen. Most of the time, he transforms partially, and we only see his full transformation during the final battle. The body looks decent, but the face is just terrible. I get what they were going for. They didn't want Kraven killing regular animals, so they had him fight a superpowered animal in the third act. But the effects are bad. This Rhino looks like a character from a 2000s movie, back when Hollywood thought full CGI characters were a good idea.
You are horrifying to look at.
The rest of the effects are hit or miss. Everything involving Kraven looks good. We see him leaping around and moving like an animal in scenes that are obviously CGI, but the effects are polished enough that they don't take you out of the action. Some of the animals, like the lion from the trailers, are well rendered. That lion looks jacked, and one swipe from its paw could knock down a wall, but the effects are convincing enough. The problem is that there are too many scenes where it's obvious that the characters are standing in front of a green screen, especially when more than one animal is on screen. These effects are going to look especially bad compared to Mufasa, where the animals look photorealistic. Still, it's not Cats level bad. Now, let's talk about the action. The action scenes are solid. They made good use of Kraven's made-up powers. He runs super fast, climbs buildings, has enhanced strength, telescopic vision, and can move stealthily like a predator. It's a shame we've already seen Deadpool and Wolverine, because Logan's animalistic realistic fighting style makes Kraven's moves feel less fresh, but the action scenes are still entertaining. We've got a prison escape, a city chase, an infiltration into a mob base, and all the third act fights in the savannah. These fights are different enough not to feel repetitive, and Kraven fights different kinds of enemies using all his powers. They're not on the level of John Wick or Mission Impossible, but it's the best action we've gotten from Sony's universe. At least it's not two blobs fighting in the dark. When Kraven starts killing people, you can see everything pretty clearly.
Brutal!
It helps that there's plenty of blood. The R rating isn't just for show. Kraven rips off ears, crushes heads, stabs people, and splits poachers in half. There's also unnecessary swearing to remind you that this is an adults-only movie. But I gotta admit, I expected a bit more. I thought Kraven would be more violent than Deadpool and Wolverine, since the R rating was the major selling point for this movie. There's a lot of blood, but it's not as graphic as The Boys. Nothing here would gross out your mom. So yeah, it's Sony's most brutal movie so far, but it's not the most violent superhero movie ever made or anything. But if the action is decent, why doesn't it save the movie? Well, there's not enough action. Kraven is 2 hours long, and all the action scenes are short, leaving long stretches of people talking, and Kraven staring at animals, and Kraven talking to his brother, and Kraven talking to his dad, and Kraven talking to Calypso, and Rhino talking to mobsters, and Nikolai talking to mobsters.
Boring!
This makes the pacing super slow, and the movie ends up feeling ridiculously long. In terms of tone and rhythm, it's more like The Penguin than John Wick. I get why they did it this way. Mobster stories aren't usually packed with action, and I appreciate that they didn't throw in jokes every 5 minutes just to keep the audience awake. Kraven has a couple of James Bond level one-liners that might make you smile, but at no point do they break the tension with a fart joke like in Venom 2. But the thing is, Kraven isn't as well written or directed as The Penguin, so it doesn't keep you hooked for the full 2 hours. The action scenes are decent, but the rest of the movie doesn't maintain the same intense tone as The Penguin, which didn't let you breathe, even during conversations in Oz's apartment. It might sound like a TikTok level take, but the biggest problem with Kraven is that the first half of the movie is pretty boring. There's over half an hour where Kraven doesn't kill anyone. In any other movie, that wouldn't be an issue, but we're here to watch Kraven hunt people, because that's what the trailers promised us. It's like if John Wick 4 spent 30 straight minutes on Keanu Reeves chatting with other assassins. Maybe the lore would be interesting, but that's not why we bought the tickets. All of this could have been fixed with more action scenes or by cutting the runtime. Kraven should have been an hour and 15 minutes max. And they didn't even need to radically change the story, because there's so much material they could have cut. For example, halfway through, a new villain shows up who wasn't in the trailers. He works as Rhino's henchman and is a character from the comics, but I won't spoil who it is in case you plan to watch the movie.
No, I don't think I will.
This guy's powers are kind of interesting and decently adapted, but he's just filler. He wants revenge on Kraven because the hunter killed his mentor, but I didn't give a damn about his story. It goes nowhere and adds nothing to the rest of the movie. They could have cut all his scenes, and the main plot wouldn't change a bit. He's like the hippies in The Last Dance, except at least this guy has powers. And it gets worse. The script is really weak. Kraven and his brother are well written. Nobody's convincing me otherwise. But the movie has the typical Sonyverse problems, like characters randomly showing up and disappearing. In Kraven's first mission, we meet a woman who pilots his plane and takes him everywhere. She seems like she's going to play a supporting role because she's the only one accompanying Kraven on his missions. Maybe she works for the government, or she's a friend of Kraven's. Maybe she's his fling, or an animal rights activist who crossed paths with him years ago. But they never answer any of that, and it doesn't matter. When we reach the third act, this woman disappears, and they don't mention her again.
Good riddance.
There's also a mobster who's Rhino's right-hand man. And no, he's not the mysterious assassin I mentioned earlier. This guy has a lot of lines, but his death is quick and super random. If you blink, you'll miss it. He wasn't the most interesting character ever, but if they made us spend so much time with him, the least they could have done was give him a good death at Kraven's hands. But it seems that was too much to ask. And the worst handled character is Calypso. When she was a kid, she saved Kraven's life with a magic potion. Now she's become a lawyer, but feels like she should do more to help innocent people. She teams up with Kraven in a way that feels super forced, and it's obvious they'll end up as a couple at some point. But in the last few minutes of the movie, she disappears, and we don't hear anything else about her, like the writers forgot she existed. I could accept that for Kraven's pilot, but not for Calypso, who was an important character. It's like if Mary Jane didn't get closure at the end of Spider-Man 1.
Unacceptable.
And there are some subplots that make no sense. During Kraven's origin story, we're told his mom took her own life because of some mental health issue. Feels like a cheap excuse to make Kraven hate his dad, since he got along with his mom but not Nikolai. But throughout the entire movie, we see flashbacks of Kraven's mom locked in a mental hospital. At least, I guess they're flashbacks because we don't know if Kraven was actually there or if he's imagining all of it. To make things even more confusing, there are hints that maybe Nikolai put her there or even killed her to get custody of the kids. But it's not clear. This isn't something that should be left up to the audience's interpretation, because in the third act, Kraven gets poisoned and starts hallucinating. There's a parallel with his mom's hallucinations, suggesting she might have been poisoned too, which is why she seemed crazy, but that goes nowhere. nowhere, and I don't know why they even included it.
It's a mess.
If the script is full of issues and the pacing's a mess, doesn't that make Kraven the worst movie in the Sonyverse? Well, not really. Kraven is not good. No denying that. It's a low-effort movie that's fine for killing time on a lazy Sunday afternoon if you've got nothing better to do, and if you can survive the first hour, which drags a lot. It's not as cringy as Madam Web, and it's not one of those movies that's so bad it's good. It's a little better written and directed than Morbius, but it's not as fun as the Venom movies. I get why people are mad. This isn't the Kraven from the comics, and Sony wasted the opportunity of adapting Kraven's Last Hunt. But what bugs me most is that they turned Kraven into an anti-hero. He comes off like a shirtless knockoff Punisher, and now there's no way to justify Aaron Taylor Johnson going up against any version of Spider-Man. Still, it wasn't as painful to sit through as Joker 2, and it's nowhere near the unwatchable disaster of Halle Berry's Catwoman, like some people claim. But don't think I'm happy with this. I'd rather Marvel get Spider-Man's rights back. Kevin Feige would cancel this Spider-Man-less universe and use villains like Kraven in proper Spider-Man projects, making the most of them. We tell you how that would work in this video over here.
You interested?